Hi all, welcome to Ethics for Information Professionals. As promised, here is my introductory video. My apologies, I'm still a little under the weather and coughing and hoarse, so hopefully you can just bear with me for this video. It's going to be pretty, pretty quick. I wanted to say a little bit about myself and about the course. Starting with me, I'm a doctoral student. I study information ethics and social epistemology. Information ethics is pretty straightforward. It's basically closely aligned with the subject of this course. Questions about the value of access to information and control over information are pretty much my bread and butter. I also dabble in social epistemology. Epistemology is the study of knowledge, and social epistemology is the study of how we acquire knowledge from other people, and also how we set up institutions and policies that encourage the social acquisition of knowledge, so we can have more people acquiring knowledge, or institutions that are better tracking knowledge, so things about, for instance, the judicial process, or something like that. I received my MLS in 2008, and my library experience is primarily with kids and teenagers in public libraries. And the other reason I bring up the fact that I received my master's degree in 2008 is because it is not so long ago that I was in your shoes, and so I certainly remember what it was like to be an MLS student. I want to shift gears really quickly and talk about the course. And in particular, I want to talk about the sort of day-to-day operations in terms of how things are going to go week to week. And then I want to talk a little bit about the activism project. Starting with the sort of week-to-week process, every week, starting on Monday, there's going to be a new lecture, usually a new video or podcast, and it's going to be devoted to the discussion of a particular topic. I actually post the lectures on Sunday afternoon or evening, and you are welcome to check in and access the content then, but I don't really expect you to have read the content or even really thought much about that week's content until starting on Monday. That means that on Sunday of a week we can continue discussing the material from the previous week. On Mondays, when I post the lecture, in addition to the lecture, I also post what I call a reflection question or activity. And those are just sort of short questions or activities that I ask you to complete and write about and post to the forum. They're really short. It's just intended to get you sort of thinking about the topic or a particular aspect of it. And those posts are due on Wednesday. By Saturday, I would like you to respond to 2 of your peers' reflection questions or activities. And that's just a sort of way of both getting the discussion started and helping to sort of simulate an actual conversation. And in addition to the reflection question or activity, I also post sort of general food for thought, do you agree, do you not agree, why questions at the end of the discussions, just to sort of help guide our topical discussion and sort of raise some things that I think are important for you to think about. But those discussion questions are more food for thought. Do you have any other questions? What do you think about these? And they're not necessarily required, although I strongly encourage you to complete them. And if you miss a reflection question one week, but are particularly active with the discussion questions another week, that can count as well. I'm generally very flexible with how I assign participation points. My primary purpose in requiring participation is just that as an online class, we really need to have people posting and actively responding in order for it to be a good class. The biweekly assignments in the midterm are really straightforward. Every other week, we're going to have an assignment. I try to make the purpose of the assignment and what's required of it very clear. If you have any questions, feel free to ask me about it. And those are always going to be due on Sunday night because they're just due before the beginning of the following week. So consider it, sometime before Monday morning. The midterm, again, is very straightforward. It's just going to be an exam in the middle of the semester covering the ethical theories and ethical approaches that we've talked about over the course of the first part of the semester. It's a little earlier than the midpoint. But if you've done well on the biweekly assignments, you're going to do really well on the midterm. It's not tricky. The last thing that I want to talk about is actually the activism project. So, the activism project. The biweekly assignments and the midterm are primarily intended to do two things. They're to test your knowledge and understanding of the different ethical approaches and the issues that we've talked about. And this is just a matter of, have you done the readings? Are you following along? Are we all on the same page? And they're also intended to encourage you to think critically and develop your own reasoned views about those issues. The activism project is a little bit different. It does encourage you to think critically and develop your own views, but it just sort of has a different approach. We spend a lot of time talking about actions and policies and a lot of the deep ethical challenges that arise in library and information services. But I think that the paradigmatic ethical situation in library and information services isn't so much the dilemmas that we see, but the situations where we know what we should do, but it's very difficult to do so. So, for example, I'm sure many of you who have experiences working the reference desk know that occasionally patrons will come up to the reference desk very upset about some particular issue, and they'll be very rude, very abrasive, mean, and it can be very uncomfortable. And we know in those situations that rather than responding in kind, that what we need to do is to be considerate and respectful and compassionate about their particular situation and listen to where they're coming from. But that can be a very difficult thing to do on a rough day when someone is yelling at you and being completely unreasonable. I hope that this class is useful for situations like that as well. And the activism project is a way for you to think about the ethical issues, the more mundane but no less important ethical issues, also, not just the more challenging ones. The ethical issues that matter to you, and also for you to think about what kind of professional you want to be. And we're going to be talking more about what that means later on in the class. But I know you learned something about advocacy in the marketing class offered at Searles. And one of the things that I would like to bring home in this class is that advocacy is not just about the particular services that are offered by the library or by the information service, but also about why those services matter. And that means that advocacy is about values. Now, one thing about advocacy is that it is less effective if you do not actually share and have passion for those values as well. So, the activism project is a way for you to explore the values of information services that you are passionate about, in the hopes of carrying through those times when you know what you ought to do, but it is particularly difficult to do so.